So our third topic is architecting backwards, how open source is hijacking enterprise architecture. Now, we talked about this in the previous topic, and we kind of hinted at it. And yeah, I mean, I do see that we are, as you said, we are running away with and getting excited by all this new technology, whether it's open source and cloud native, whether it's AI and Gen AI and so on. And it's kind of not allowing us to say, well, hang on, where does this kind of fit in as a word again, strategically with what we want to achieve? Is this, are we just playing with that because this is just the latest tech and we kind of want to play with it? Is it kind of the latest toy? Or does this kind of, is this advantageous for our business? Right. Is open source and cloud native design a kind of a shift left of how we do enterprise architecture going forward?
I'd hate to use the term shift left because I don't think you can shift it left.
Google is talking about shift down, which is a completely.
I mean, but I think you've got sort of epoch defining change going on in the world generally, which says, minimum viable product, fail forward, fail fast, work it out and make it better. And we've seen that creep into, I mean, I hate, put it like this, the worst job in the world will be the first astronaut to go on an Elon Musk journey to the moon. The chance of survival could be quite small because he works on the principle, get it up there fast, let's have a launch. Oh dear, the booster blew up halfway through. We'll fix it in the next release,
Radiation belt? What radiation belt?
Yeah. So I think, there are, and I think it's captured the whole of our imagination is that if we are not completely agile and use the Bloor term, if we're not mutable, i.e., perpetual change, then we die. If you stop moving, you die. And it's got to the point where, I think it's gone too far, to be honest. And would you build a house, a modern house that you want without any architecture's input from the architect?
Yeah.
No, of course well, unless you're a brilliant builder who can see it in his mind's eye, most people are going to need an architect's design. And it just, for me, it feels like we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater because enterprise architecture had a bad name for taking, way too long, being inflexible, all the things that open source and microservices and the whole sort of cloud environment has said, let's change, we need to be nimble, we need to be agile, we need to be fly. Goes against the idea of having a defined enterprise architecture.
Yes.
And I just think it's gone too far, and therefore, what's the way in which we can prototype to a design rather than just throw it together and see if it works, which is, and I'm sure, the sort of space program that Musk has got running isn't quite as bad, but it does feel like, oh dear, that one didn't work. Let's try the next one, and you're thinking the first time they say, we're going to put astronauts on it now, you're going, I hope you've got rid of all the problems before, and that's what it feels like here now. It's almost like it doesn't, because there isn't the same, level of risk and sort of implication of getting things wrong.
I'd love to see how, a lot of these kind of, and there's lots of enterprises out there, adopted sort of open source and cloud native and that sort of, DevOpsy approach and a platform engineering approach and so on. I'd love to see how much documentation they've done. I'd love to see how far up does that document, does it get to the enterprise architects, or does the enterprise architect just get an email saying, oh, by the way, we're now doing this? And it's like, oh, okay.
Well,
do I have a say in that or not?
the enterprise architect might be on the dole actually. So I mean,
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is kind of this, the other point I think that we were trying to make with this is, yes, we're getting, like I said, excited about these tools and open source stuff that's coming, and we're kind of building it, and then we're not really thinking about it from a business perspective, and we're not certainly not thinking about it from an architectural perspective, this kind of enterprise architecture perspective. So the other question was kind of, are tools and open source software, if you like, or cloud native, eclipsing the purpose of what we're trying to do?
um, obviously not by themselves. It's the way in which we use them, and the fact that we can do it with open source tools much more easily
Yeah,
with microservices. I mean, you can start to put together applications, for example, just by picking, almost like a pick and mix at the sweet shop. I'll have this order processing piece and that accounting piece and this, and literally in very small chunks and put it all together. The APIs exist and
yeah,
the interconnects and bang. And people get very excited about that. And you think, yeah, okay, at a certain level, that's fine. But again, it becomes, you build more and more complexity in, the bigger the application gets, the more complexity goes in there, the more points of failure, the sort of, yes, it's easy to pull one piece out, but you put and replace it with another piece, as long as all the APIs are working, as long as everything is, the interfaces are all nicely set. And we're making some horrible assumptions, I think, that this all works. And the one area that I think will drive us back to being far more enterprise architecture aware are digital twins. If we start
really, okay,
if we start using digital twins specific, to drive business process and to understand business process, if unless you've architected that properly, it will be a mess. It will, will you be able to change a digital twin, to take on the role of, let's say, a call center in its entirety and link it to the various other parts of the
yeah,
business. If you haven't worked that one through and got some sort of enterprise architecture in place, I think that will get harder and harder. So I think there's a barrier. I think, there's a scale barrier, but there's a complexity barrier that will mean if they keep trying to do that without enterprise architecture, it'll start to fail. And
yeah.
I'm not
So
sure we're quite there yet.
absolutely, but I mean, I think the reason, one of the reasons why, Paul and I sort of wanted to pick this up as a topic was I was at the recent event by Harness, sponsored by Harness, called Unscripted in London, the AI Software Delivery Conference, as they called it. And one of the presenters there, I'll try and get details for all of this. I'm not sure I can show any of it. I think I might have a slide, so we'll see. But one of the presentations was about the so-called ball of mud concept. And the ball of mud concept was talking all about exactly what we're saying. It's this kind of, spaghetti sort of junction design of the architecture. If you were really to map out the sort of the open source and cloud native designs that we have today, if you were to actually architect them on and actually draw them out on a piece of paper, they would look like a spaghetti junction. It would just be a complete mess, a ball of mud, essentially. So I think that was a really, apt way of actually describing it. And this sort of, ground up sort of approach to, to building sort of solutions is essentially destroying or potentially destroying sort of the business purpose of what we're trying to use the software for.
I think that's right. It is creating complexity elsewhere. I mean, there are plenty of difficulties with monolithic architectures, but it's complexity elsewhere is growing. And to me, I mean, if I use a sort of non-IT analogy, it's a bit like, hanging wallpaper. If you don't think about, and have the right tools and get yourself lined up and know everything, and you try putting down I'm just going to slap this wallpaper up there now. and oh God, look, there's a bubble. Press the bubble, and another one pops up somewhere else. And then when you go and try and do the second roll, it doesn't quite, the pattern doesn't quite marry up. And you think, oh God, and
Yeah.
my wife won't let me anywhere near doing that. She's very good at it, but I'm hopeless. But that's the analogy, isn't it? You try and
Yeah.
do it without really thinking through, how am I going to get that thing pasted, measured, up and rolled? Have I got the right length?
Yeah.
And all those sort of things. And if you don't,
Yes.
and that's what we're seeing here now. I think that's the analogy with the ball of mud. But um,
Yeah.
it's a very complex world. I mean, that chart that was in that presentation
Mm,
was sort of slightly scary to look at,
yes.
in the sense that, my God, how do you pick your way through it? Because actually, one of the things that you will see more and more is this, and particularly in the sort of agentic AI space, is that the implications, the interrelation and the implications of those interrelations will be seen and felt very quickly. So you get it
Mm,
wrong, the whole thing will grind to a halt unless you're
yeah.
careful.
Yeah. And the highlights, I think, in the chat, I do actually have it. So I'm looking at it now. So we'll try and maybe put it up on the screen. Was a lot of manual software development going on, and then fragmented tooling, which I agree with, and I think platform engineering with IDPs is trying to really tackle that. Very little monitoring and observability, almost nothing on data. It's probably the thinnest kind of line in terms of how you manage your data. And then again, a very thin line on enterprise architecture at the top. There's a little enterprise architecture at the top. So yeah, I do agree with that. And I think this is just really a symptom of how open source and cloud native, this kind of modern way of doing things like DevOps and what have you, that really operates. It's kind of by younger generations in most cases. The people actually implementing are kind of the younger generations, and they don't really have necessarily not necessarily the discipline, but maybe the experience of, hang on, we actually need to design this properly, and then actually go and implement it. Not kind of do the implementation. Go, oh yeah, look, I can ping that, machine and that VM, and yeah, it's all working. That's fine. Drop in a bit of security, and I'm done. It's like, yeah, but what does that look like on a piece of paper? How do the two boxes connect with each other, and what are you using, and protocols and things like that?
Yeah, but I think it's slightly unfair in one sense. We've given developers freedom to develop applications quickly, and that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's.
But we're now taking it back with platform engineering.
Yeah, exactly. There's a level of.
We're now dictating to them what they can do and what they can't do.
Yeah, and that's as much because in doing that, we didn't keep the connections between the development process and the architectural, all the bits and pieces, all the bits that actually they don't like doing.
Yeah.
Free them up. We've said to them, you're going to be free to develop the applications any which way you want, as fast as you want. And to an extent, we're saying we weren't quite right. And I think there's a middle path to be got, because we absolutely want developers to developing applications as fast as possible. And platform engineering ought to be, how do we facilitate that by ensuring that the other bits are in place?
Yeah.
Not how do we make the developers have to go and do that themselves, because they won't.
Yeah.
So I think that, to an extent, if you want to take the blame away from developers and leave it with everybody else and say, well, you just told us to go off and develop applications.
Yeah.
We've done that. And now you want us to run the operational platforms as well. Oh, and you don't want us to use the tools that we're used to using that really develop things fast.
Yeah.
You want to restrict what tools I can use? Yeah. Oh, hold on a minute. And so I've got a level of sympathy with the developers, even when I'm sort of wanting to bat them around the head and go, for crying out loud, would you think about the wider issues?
Yeah. That sounds like another shift left to me. So
yes, I think it is a shift left, and I think what I'm saying is, whoa, hold on, guys.
I can see somebody in KubeCon 2027 standing up and saying, "We need to shift left back to enterprise architecture," and I'll go, "Oh my God." Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.